welcome to the EAAB's CPD presentation on real estate marketing. My name is Graham J, and I will be presenting this topic for you. I represent a company called CPMD, or the College of People Management and Development. Although this particular presentation is entitled Real Estate Marketing, you will notice that there are in fact a number of topics that will be covered in this presentation. During the period of time that I have available to me in order to do the presentation for you, I'm not going to be able to cover all of the topics, so I would please encourage you to work through the presentation that's available on the EAAB's website and that you will have at your disposal. I will, however, indicate to you as we're going along which slides I will not be covering in the presentation, and will then note that for you. To begin with, you will see that there are 9 topics that we will be covering. I'm going to talk briefly about each particular topic. And to commence with, we're going to start with real estate, professionalism, and ethics. So, ladies and gents that are viewing this presentation, if you think to yourself, what is ethics? How would you define ethics? And I think for me, the most simple way for us to think about ethics is, what do we do when other people aren't looking? There are a number of codes that relate to ethics. The Americans have a piece of legislation called the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. The British have a code which is called the Cadbury Commission Code or Report. In South Africa, you may be aware we have something called the King 3 Code, and you should, all of you watching this presentation, be very aware that the Estate Agency Affairs Board has a professional code of ethics which all estate agents should be adhering to on a daily basis. But really, for me, the most important thing when talking about ethics is to make sure that we are doing the right things all of the time. And as I said earlier in the presentation, so what is it that you're doing when people aren't looking? It's all very well to do the right things when people are looking, but one needs to behave in an ethical and a professional manner all the time. So as you will all be aware, you're dealing with people's money, and you're also dealing with probably the biggest asset purchase that they're going to make in their lifetime. It then becomes extremely important to behave in an honest and ethical fashion, because you are dealing with such a large amount of money. In business, if you do the wrong thing, it gives you an extremely poor reputation in a very short space of time. It's very easy to damage your reputation. It's not so easy to build up a good reputation. So one always needs to be aware of that. You'll see on the slide I've said to you to remember that the law is the floor, and really what we should be doing is aiming for a minimum standard, which is laid down in our case in the Estate Agency Affairs Board Professional Code of Ethics, but there's nothing wrong with trying to aim for a higher standard than that. In other words, that should be the minimum standard that you would be looking to achieve, and hence that would be the floor that you would be looking at, and obviously we would suggest that you would be looking for something of a higher standard. Being highly professional means that you need to maintain the best possible standards, and that's the way in which you deal with your clients as well as third parties. A lot of organizations that operate in the real estate industry do not only have the Estate Agency Affairs Board Professional Code of Ethics that they utilize, but those of you that work for larger franchise estate agencies will also know that you will more than likely have your own code of ethics that the organization expects you to meet as well on a daily basis. You will see on the next slide there's a number of examples of behavior that is illegal and unethical. So just some examples. Illegal behavior would include bribery and corruption, the misuse of trust funds, not paying taxes, operating as an estate agent without having a valid Fidelity Fund certificate, not adhering to your contractual obligations, and behaving in an unlawful manner with people's money. All of these types of conduct are not only outlawed in terms of the Professional Code of Ethics, but may also lead to potential criminal sanctions being placed against you. If the Estate Agency Affairs Board investigates and it's found that you've contravened certain sections of the Act or the Code of Ethics, that could lead to further criminal action being taken against you. Examples of unethical conduct would include dishonesty, tricking clients in an illegal manner or an unethical manner, misrepresenting yourself, acting unfairly, disclosing confidential information which a client may have provided to you and then providing that to third parties, omitting to provide relevant information, overpricing in order to get yourself a higher commission, and making unreasonable demands on the people that you are dealing with. So really what I can say to you at this point in time is to remember that you need to always behave in an ethical manner, be professional, and my experience generally with estate agents that behave in such a fashion is that this paves the way to success. You may lose a deal here and there, but ultimately for long-term success, if you behave in a professional manner, that is what clients will appreciate. And for those of you that are watching this presentation, you will also be aware that an important aspect of marketing yourself in this business is word of mouth. Clients that are happy to deal with you because you behave in a professional and ethical manner will most certainly be willing to pass that information on to other people who are looking for an estate agent that behaves in such a manner. Secondly, in this presentation, what I'd like to have a look at is the characteristics of a successful sales agent. What I'm going to do is just provide some general information in this part of the presentation, because you may have other things that you want to add in for yourself. Obviously, we can't interact with one another because it is one-way communication, but my experience shows me that estate agents that are successful, there are three characteristics or traits that they display. The first is attitude, and that's being positive. It can be sometimes very difficult in a difficult market to be positive, but always important to be positive. Second is the activities that you follow on a daily basis, and being conscientious and hardworking. Estate agents that are successful have a system that they utilize. They stick to that system. They work that system on a daily basis. It's no good taking the view that being an estate agent is a part-time job. You can come into the office at 11, you can go for lunch at 1, and then home at 3 o'clock. Really, this is a profession that keeps you busy 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you need to have that system that you utilize and that you stick to. Thirdly, you need to have the correct skills, and this includes or encompasses two things. Number one is being correctly informed and making sure that you're always up to date. So, for example, doing this CPD presentation and fulfilling your duties and obligations to complete your CPD points would be one aspect of that, and the other would be ensuring that you keep up with your studies on an ongoing basis, doing other qualifications, not only necessarily related to the estate agency field, but just keeping yourself up to date and knowledgeable. And most importantly, you always need to make sure that you what you promise your clients you stick to. What I always say to people is that rather under-promise and over-deliver than over-promise and under-deliver, because you will always be caught out as a result. This particular slide I have covered already, so I'm going to go on to the next slide. Just some other points that I would like to make about knowing your business as part of being a successful estate agent. That's making sure that you know your area. You'll see that I've indicated to you your local, national and international property markets. Of course, if you operate in a particular area, which you will know is your farming area, you need to make sure you know the area, you understand the area, because you need to be able to answer questions that your clients pose to you. You need to understand the laws relating to property transactions, ethics, important as we've spoken about, and the requirements and obligations of any particular transaction that you would be involved in. Thirdly, it's important to know your competitors, and in this regard, what you should do almost on a monthly basis is a competitor analysis. Who are your competitors? What are they doing? Where do they operate? How do they operate? You need to know your competition. You need to know what you are facing in your particular area, because your clients are going to ask you these questions. It's important that you get to know your sellers and buyers. You need to know their needs, wants, and desires. It's important for you to make them feel like at that point in time, they are the only seller or buyer that you are dealing with, and that it's not just something that you deal with on a daily basis. So you need to put your buyers and sellers on some kind of a pedestal or a platform and make them feel extremely important. Also, you need to get to know your company, your colleagues, how your company operates, and your policies and procedures. On a day-to-day basis, your success will also be determined not only by the knowledge that you have, which we've mentioned already, but gaining experience, understanding business relationships between yourself, your clients, as well as your colleagues that you deal with, making sure that you provide top-class customer service. I think for me, that's probably one of the most important things. Your clients want to be contacted. They need to be kept up to date all the time. I think one of the worst things that you can do as an estate agent is not keeping your clients informed and up to date. It becomes extremely irritating. Obviously, in these days of instant communication, sometimes you deal with people that send you a message or phone you and want an immediate return. It's not always possible, but as soon as possible, you need to get back to that person and keep them updated and informed. Obviously, your canvassing and marketing is extremely important, because that's how you're going to be able to gain your stock on a day-to-day basis. And you are sitting and working through this presentation. Why? Because part of your obligations as an agent is to keep up to date and informed. And so our feeling and belief is that CPD is going to make you a more competent and more knowledgeable professional as time goes by. This particular slide, I'm going to move on as well. I have mentioned all of these requirements on this slide to you already. So thirdly, what I want to have a look at is time management. I love this particular quote, which you'll see is from Michael Altshuler. The bad news is that time flies. The good news is that you're the pilot. So there are a number of things that are obviously important here. One of the things that I have mentioned already is that you need to be continuously keeping your clients informed. Obviously, property is a time-sensitive transaction, so it's important that you stick to the time limits. You will also know that documentation needs to be provided to conveyances within a certain period of time. Buyers and sellers need to be kept informed within a certain period of time. Transfer duty needs to be paid within a certain period of time. And so as you're the pilot, you really are going to be making sure that the transaction progresses at the pace that it needs to progress. On a day-to-day basis, time management encompasses a number of different things. This includes considering everything that you have to do and want to do on a daily basis, understanding how much time and activity takes on a day-to-day basis, making sure that you write plans. I find that the most successful people are the people that actually write their own plans and stick to them. And what I would encourage all of you to do is on a Sunday evening, write a plan for the week. What is it that you're going to do? And on a day-to-day basis, then checking that plan and seeing how you are progressing on a day-to-day basis. You need to also make sure that you are organized in your work environment. I think one of the biggest problems that an estate agent can have is where they are disorganized. Disorganization is going to most certainly spell disaster for you. If you are not an organized person, one of the best suggestions that I can make is to get yourself an assistant who can actually help you organize your time, organize your day. You're going to have to pay that person, but I can almost certainly guarantee you that the money that you're going to spend on an assistant is going to bring you back several times more by being organized. As I say, the biggest problem you can have is being disorganized. So what are some of the time wasters that we have on a day-to-day basis? So the types of things that can happen: interruptions. This can be either telephone, personal visitors, meetings, tasks that should be delegated, acting with incomplete information, dealing with various team members, and putting out fires. So that would be crisis management. What you should be doing, and my suggestion to you would be, is to have a system that you operate from on a day-to-day basis. For example, Emails are answered at a certain time of the day. Calls are returned at a certain time of the day. And I can hear you saying that's not always possible, and I understand that. You need to get back to clients. Obviously, clients want as soon as possible return from their query that they have made. But you also need to make sure that you're not getting yourself into a complete mess. So really, you should have some type of system that you stick to in terms of being able to manage the time wasters that happen on a day-to-day basis. So just some examples of time savers that I'd like to give you. Multitasking. So you'll see one of the examples I've given you there is internet surfing while you are filing. Try and avoid peak time wasters. So this would be road traffic. Sometimes you can use the internet instead of going somewhere. It can save you a tremendous amount of time. Work smarter. Look at your day-to-day work habits and ask yourself, can I actually reorganize and rearrange my day-to-day work habits? Can I make myself actually more efficient and more effective? And of course, technology, extremely important. Being able to list properties online, being able to use things like internet and email to make your life much easier on a day-to-day basis. Procrastination, of course, a big problem. I think that for all of us, we often like to put off something that we can do today to tomorrow because it's a lot easier for us to do it. But really what it's going to do, it's going to cost you money in the long run. And what I'd like to say to you is, instead of putting off today for tomorrow, rather what we can do today, let's get it done today, get it out of the way and put it to bed. So procrastination would be where you have inaction or inactivity, and really it's something that's going to cause you a lot of money in the long run. I also want to make you aware of something called the Pareto principle. The Pareto principle states generally that 80% of your results come from 20% of your effort. In a work environment, very often that would be 20% of the people produce 80% of the results. In your particular situation, seeing as we're talking about time management, what you will find is that 20% of your time and effort will produce 80% of your results. So what you need to try and work out are what those 80% time wasters are, and to try and get rid of them from your day-to-day work environment. As I've indicated to you already, make lists. Your lists will help you greatly, and also distinguish between urgent and important tasks so that you know what to do in what order and what priority you need to give each of those particular items. Finding 20% of your business, some tips that I would like to give you. So look around you, see what stock is available, where do you spend most of your time, where are you getting most of your results. Highlight the important things that are giving you results. Try and get rid of or ignore the unimportant things, and ultimately the trick is to try and figure out which is the correct 20% that's giving you those results. If possible, delegate. Okay, it's not always possible to do, especially if you're an agent working on your own. And this is where I mentioned to you earlier that it may be very useful for you to use an assistant, to have somebody to help you, because you can then pass on certain tasks to them. For example, the obtaining of things like title deeds, the completion of paperwork, moving paperwork between your office and the conveyance. If you can have somebody to assist you, it saves you a great amount of time. Remember, your function is to try and sell as much as possible. You would be well aware that in this industry you're not rewarded for effort, you are rewarded for results. Okay? You're not going to get paid because of how beautifully you did your paperwork and how wonderful your files look. What you are paid for is making sure that you're matching your buyers and sellers and getting the transaction complete. This slide I've mentioned already. It's all about planning, so please have a look through the slide. Don't skip over it. It will just reinforce what I have mentioned to you already. The fourth thing that I'd like to have a look at with you is the psychology of marketing. To be consistently effective, marketers must hone in on people's basic desires and expectations. In order to make an impact, marketers, that would be obviously people like yourself, need to understand consumer behavior and psychology. So why do people behave in the way in which they do? And the more experienced agents out there, you will already become used to and understand consumer behavior, the way in which people do things, why they do things, what gets them to do certain things. And so to be a successful agent, you need to understand that consumer behavior, because what you're doing is you're matching your buyers and sellers with one another. So how do we go about influencing people to buy real estate? So just some tips that I would like to give you. You need to know and understand your customers. You need to effectively target relevant customers. You need to provide value and enhance customer satisfaction. And I think especially because you offer a service and it's not a tangible product, very often your challenge is to be able to demonstrate value for the commission or the fee that you're charging. And people are going to ask you, so what are you going to do for me that you're charging this fee? And that's where you need to be able to demonstrate the value and the customer satisfaction that you're able to provide. You need to enhance the value of your company through various value add-ons. You need to improve your products and services continuously. Obviously, in your environment, it would be the service that you offer. You need to create a competitive advantage for yourself. And I think the question you need to ask yourselves here, why would a client choose to deal with me as opposed to one of my competitors? What do I do that's different from one of my competitors that will really encourage a potential buyer or seller to deal with me as opposed to one of my competitors? You need to also understand how competitors view you in the marketplace versus your competitors. It's the point I've just made. And then apply marketing strategies in order to achieve a positive outcome. Not only are you doing business, not only are you trying to earn money on a daily basis to support your families, to support your lifestyle, but also you are an important participant in the broader society. So one needs to think about, how can I do better for the broader society? What can I do to perhaps support charities, promote healthy habits, reduce drug use in my area? And obviously that may have a positive impact on how potential clients view you in future because of the fact that you have given back to society. Furthermore, just some other points that we can have a look at. Real estate marketers need to present a mixture of emotional and practical marketing in order to appeal to a wider audience. Buying a home isn't just making a financial investment, it's also an emotional investment. So it's important to ensure that a potential buyer understands, so what is this property going to do for me? It's not just a roof over my head, but it's a home where my family is going to live, where I'm going to raise my family, where birthdays, celebrations, events like Christmas and so on will occur. And so this particular property is going to be able to do that for that buyer. So one way in which marketers can appeal to consumers is through an emotional appeal. Those seeking the experience of a healthy family environment will respond to concepts that include happiness, humor, commitment, and nostalgia. And I suppose one of the sayings that a lot of you may have heard is that you are perhaps selling the sizzle and not the steak. And for me, that's fine. One can sell the sizzle but not the steak. But I think it's important to ensure that the property meets the buyer's particular needs. So really what you need to do as a marketer is you need to understand what is the buyer's motivation, why do they want this property, and then it's your role to demonstrate that this property can fulfill their needs that they're looking for in that property. Okay, this particular slide I really have mentioned. I think just some of the points I'd like to make is obviously for you to offer good service, not to be too pushy, be an agent or a marketer who is approachable, demonstrate that you listen, not just that you talk. There's a reason why we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So it's a lot easier for you to rather listen to the other person than to talk to them. Make sure you understand their needs, their requirements. Be honest and transparent. Be professional. Be trustworthy. Be understanding. Point number 5 I'd like to have a look at is to talk to you a little bit about listing and the way in which to go about doing this. So first important thing for you to do is to identify your farming area. So that's the area where you're going to be operating in. And some suggestions to make in terms of understanding your farming area is to draw up a profile of sellers and buyers in your area. In other words, you need to have a look at demographic information of the people that operate in your area or live in your area. So ages, type of income groupings, what it is that they're looking for. Do they want to be close to schools, a hospital, certain amenities in the area? Because that will give you an idea as to the type of people that you need to appeal to. So you need to also think about your market share and the size of the market share that you would be looking to achieve. You need to carry out regular and continuous contact with homeowners to build relationships, even if you may have sold a property to somebody 2, 3, 4 years ago. It's important to remain in contact with them, always to bear in mind that today's buyer is going to become tomorrow's seller. You need to, as I've mentioned, you need to be aware of the amenities in your area, support and liaise with local businesses in your area. As you will be well aware, real estate is all about relationships, making contacts and building a network. Establish the price of properties that are sold in your area. Make sure that your area is not overtraded, because that's going to create problems for you in terms of being able to make enough sales in order to support yourself. And most importantly, never talk poorly about the competition. The listing process would include obtaining stock. How would you do that? You need to canvass, so you need to be able to find new stock. You need to think about creative ways of getting your foot in the door. So how are you going to make contact with potential sellers? How are you going to make contact with potential buyers? You need to think about the presentation that you do to your seller in such a way that the seller is going to want to deal with you. Really, what I can recommend to you is to think about ways in which you're going to make sure that the seller is going to listen to your presentation and say, I definitely don't want to deal with anyone else. You're the agent that I need to market my property for me. Related to that, point number 6 is advertising. So why would you advertise? There are various reasons why you would advertise. That includes to promote your company, to promote the properties that you have listed on your books, to promote yourself. You also want to obviously make sure that people have your contact details. You want to create interest and desire and a call to action. Ultimately, what do you want to do? You want to sell or let the properties that you have listed on your books. You want to motivate people to that call to action. You want to reach the correct buyer or target market. You want to create mileage for yourself, even although you may not be able to generate a sale now with a potential buyer. You never know, in 2, 3, 4 months' time, or even next year, that buyer is going to want to deal with you, and also to educate buyers and sellers in the community. So some tips for you in terms of creating effective advertising. Your advertising really should comply with 4 things, or there should be 4 sort of requirements of your advertising, and that is the following. Advertising, first of all, should create attention. Secondly, it needs to create interest. Thirdly, it needs to create a desire. And fourthly, what you want is for people to then do something. So that would be action. You'll see that we use something called the AIDA principle. So that is attention, interest, desire, and action. With any particular property, you should be looking for a unique selling point. That's also for yourself. What is your unique selling point? You'll also be aware as an agent that the advertisements that agents write are very often creative and unique. It's important to have a sense of humor. Sometimes properties are difficult to sell. So you need to sometimes be humorous about that property, sell the benefits of the property, use headlines that are attention grabbers, use persuasive words such as safety, save, easy, money, you're going to love this property, need, enjoy. These are all words that are emotive and that will establish some kind of emotional connection with the buyer. Use good descriptive words as well, such as modern, chic, bright, spectacular, enchanting, spacious, luxurious, and quaint. So what is advertising? Obviously, advertising is ensuring that people know what it is that you do. You've got to be able to market yourself. You've got to be able to explain to people what you do and how to contact you. And I think you'll find this slide particularly interesting when you read through it about the importance of advertising. We also know today that electronic media has become extremely important. And for those of you out there that are not up to speed with electronic media, I think it's well worth the investment to go on a course to find out how electronic media works. You can see from the slide that there are many types of platforms that we can utilize today. You can see Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, and so on. And obviously, we need to be able to utilize all of those various portals. The seventh element that I want to have a look at is to just talk briefly about negotiating and closing. It's all very well to do your marketing. It's all very well to deal with buyers and sellers. At the end of the day, you want a result. I think it's important for all of you watching this presentation to be aware that this industry is called real estate and not wheel estate. It's not about how many times you take a buyer to a property. At the end of the day, what you want is you want that buyer to purchase the property, or you want that tenant to let the property. So there are three things that you're going to need to get signed. That is the mandate, initially from the seller. You obviously want to get a buyer that's going to deal with you. The buyer has to sign an agreement of sale, and then all the documents that need to be signed with the conveyancer once the transaction has been complete. So part of what you're going to have to do is negotiate. So what is negotiation? You'll see this quote from Pienaar and Spoelstra. Negotiation is a process of interaction between parties directed at reaching some form of agreement that will hold and that is based upon common interests. You'll also be aware that sometimes you have to become a nursemaid, a psychologist, a nanny. You've got to do everything. But at the end of the day, you want to get the sale done, so you need to understand the psychology of the parties and be able to negotiate with the parties. Negotiation is not about tricking clients. It's not about manipulation. It's not about forcing clients. It's not about making people feel that they've been used or manipulated or forcing people. Negotiation is a process rather than an event, and it can take place in a number of ways: face-to-face, by correspondence, the use of telephone, the use of third parties, and it may mean that you're going to have to meet with the parties at more than once, several times, as many times as it takes, in order to make sure that you're able to close the deal. So you want to make sure that ultimately you get a successful transaction. Just some hints. I have mentioned some of these things before, but to reiterate, sell the need and not just the product. Want becomes a need once it is affordable. Sell some of the emotional benefits, but also be able to provide logical reasons why the property meets the buyer's needs. Always be willing to compromise, but you do not have to undersell yourself. As long as you can demonstrate the value that you add to the transaction, that should then make it a lot easier for you not to have to cut your commission. Closing the deal means that you have ultimately completed the transaction. I think an interesting statistic in this slide is that it's found that in 63% of sales presentations, the typical salesperson does not ask clients to buy or sell. It is an obligation you have to buyers and sellers, tenants and landlords, to close, because only then have you met their needs. That is completing the transaction. In other words, what we're saying is try and stay away from the hard sell. What you want to do when you deal with buyers and sellers is make yourself the logical choice. In other words, the seller should want to sign a mandate with you because you're the logical choice. Once you have explained the benefits, the advantages and so on of a property to a buyer, ultimately you should then be the logical choice to sign the deal with. Just some other points I want to make about closing the deal, so for you to be aware of. Questions that you need to ask. There's nothing wrong in asking questions, and I think important for you to be aware of why people may or may not like a particular property. Ask people their opinions. have a discussion with buyers as to why or why not a particular property may meet their needs. You may want to pose alternate questions. You may want to sit down with the buyer and put the various advantages and disadvantages or pros or cons onto a piece of paper. At the end of the day, sometimes you also need to withdraw, keep quiet, and allow the buyers to make their own decisions. Some points that I want to make about handling objections. It's important that you do not pounce. Okay? Do not try and steamroller or barge over your buyer or your tenant. If they are bringing some objections to the fore, you need to listen to what it is that they're objecting to. Do not respond glibly. Be prepared and convincing in your response. Don't argue or disapprove. Okay? Again, your buyers or your tenants that you're dealing with need to feel that you are taking their objections to heart. Don't try and score a victory. This is not a fight or a war. At the end of the day, you want to conclude a transaction, and most importantly, do not criticize your buyers, your sellers, your landlords and tenants that you're dealing with. What you should be doing is listen and showing interest, clarify the objection to make sure that everybody's on the same page, you understand what the problem is, appreciate the client's point of view, use a hinge phrase like but or however, because this allows you to handle the objection and, most importantly, communicate with the parties. Point number 8 I want to make is about deceptive trade practices. There's a whole lot of legislation in South Africa now that deals with trade practices. This includes particularly the Consumer Protection Act. I am aware that there are other CPD presentations that deal with the Consumer Protection Act. Just a point I want to make is that for the average estate agent out there dealing with second-hand property transactions, in other words, you're not dealing with the sale of property from developers, the Consumer Protection Act largely doesn't apply to you. What I would encourage you to do is to please read the slides dealing with this particular section, and there will, of course, be a whole host of information available to you on the internet where you can read up more about the Consumer Protection Act. What I do want to point out to you is that the Code of Conduct does deal with deceptive trade practices. This particular slide, I think, highlights some of the most important issues, which include not advertising in a false or misleading manner, making sure that you handle monies that are held in trust in a particular way, and always bear in mind that any party who is aggrieved in terms of their dealings with an estate agent always has recourse to complain to the Estate Agency Affairs Board. The Estate Agency Affairs Board is always at liberty to investigate a complaint, convene a hearing or a tribunal, and also, as I mentioned earlier on in the presentation, if you contravene the Estate Agency Affairs Act or the Estate Agency Affairs Board Professional Code of Ethics, it may also lead to criminal sanction. You can have a look at this particular video, which is mentioned on the next slide.
Home Sweet Home continues with Confessions of a Realtor. Here's Deborah Roberts.
It's official. The real estate market is coming back. And from princely penthouses to not-so-posh potholes,
looks like a murder scene.
An army of real estate agents is out there trying to make a killing.
This is a bare-knuckle business, and there are no refs on the sidelines.
As superstar agent Ryan Serhant portrays on $1 Million Listing New York, about to begin a new season in May,
I know you pretend like you know everything. And
a realtor's life is a daily Darwinian struggle for survival.
look me in the eye, man.
Yes, I'm looking you in the eye.
I want you to leave right now. In New York City alone, there are 27,000 real estate agents. Last year, there was 12,598 contracts.
So they're out there desperate.
And they're trying to think of ways, okay, how am I going to make money today?
Are you a shark?
You have to be.
Trouble is, sometimes those sharks are feeding on you.
Real estate can get very aggressive.
Remember this shark?
That's the nature of the business. You bring out the teeth when you're a broker.
Deals are made and lost in seconds.
Wheeling and dealing from the backseat of his chauffeured Cadillac Escalade, Serhant confesses the hustle can begin the moment you press the search button on your computer.
I can take photos from around the world, whatever it is, and I can just create, a listing page. Or what sometimes people will do, they'll keep up listings that have been on the market, for years. They sold it 2 years ago, but they've never taken it down.
So after checking out a few websites, I decided to make some calls myself. We've changed the agent's voice. I was looking at one of your listings.
They'll say something like,
We have a contract out on that one.
just went into contract.
We have others that are kind of similar.
The apartment is no longer available,
They just signed.
but I've got the guy upstairs might sell.
I can send you another one that's similar.
Can you meet me tomorrow?
Shouldn't you take it down?
Yes, yes I am.
And then they will try to show you anything because now you're an active buyer.
Then there's the listings lingo. Prepare to become fluent.
There are so many misleading words in real estate advertising, the most creative business in the world.
When it says cozy, what does that mean, cozy?
Cozy means small.
Sandra Renamato, veteran of HGTV's Property Virgins, helps decipher the code.
Awaiting your touch means you're going to have to do a lot of work here. Needs TLC means handyman special. They all mean I'm talking in the code. Oh my goodness, I'm guilty.
Partial view means you have a partial view of the water because you're looking at it through a building.
Sir Hunt showed us a trophy property that actually lives up to the hype.
After you.
Thank you.
3 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, with breathtaking views of the city.
So a view of the Empire State Building. Not bad.
But Ryan says a slick agent could pull the wool over your eyes by not mentioning all the things you can't see.
The biggest ethical issue that I see in the real estate market is dishonesty.
If somebody was hurt or killed there, if there were bed bugs there, do they have to tell me this stuff?
Yes. Now, there are a lot of agents who will say, oh, well, I didn't know. So if you say, Ryan, you never told me that, the apartment was full of termites, and I could say, oh, well, I didn't know.
And if brokers can bamboozle the buyers, they can just as easily sucker the sellers, says Renamato. Start with those open houses. Think they're for your benefit? Think again.
The real reason why a realtor does open house is for self-promotion. See, we're using the for sale sign or the ads, the internet presence to get buyers to call us, and then we can convert them.
And believe it or not, your agent may be taking money out of your pocket, all because he doesn't want to split the big fat commission with another agent.
It has happened to me that I have registered an offer on someone else's listing and the sellers never knew about it. So he had a buyer in his pocket and didn't want to see my offer.
So you may never even hear about the highest bid on your place. But for every bad agent, Renamato says, there are just as many bad clients.
She refused to stage it?
Annoying sellers who simply don't want to do what it takes to sell their home. We sent Renamato to New York City's Upper East Side to stage a real estate intervention.
How are you, Jane?
Good, nice to see you.
Yeah. When I'm bringing buyers into a home, you've got 10 seconds to impress these people. Wow, I feel like I have vertigo. You can see it there. You can see how the floor dips.
Yep, a warped floor. And what's that pesky smell?
Are you a smoker?
I'd like to say I'm a smoker in disguise.
I smelled it as soon as I walked in. How do you walk into someone's house and say it smells? But you have to.
And burned out light bulbs. Come on.
Do you think you can change 2 light bulbs?
I noticed that, and then I was like, oh, I'll do it later.
Jane, you've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 pieces of furniture plus a bed. You have to sell the space. You have to sell the size. I want you to take half of that stuff out.
As she was telling me how cluttered it was, I was starting to feel claustrophobic myself.
Worst of all, like so many sellers, Sandra says Jane has overpriced her apartment, in this case by $30,000.
If nobody's coming to see your home and other homes in the neighborhood are selling, it's time to reduce the price.
Ah, price, the $1 million word, which brings us back to Ryan Serhant's penthouse. And like the best of the best,
There's nothing else like this.
Serhant's always out to close the deal.
Any confession? Who lives in this building?
You maybe.
Yeah, right.
I've spoken earlier about ethics. I'm not going to worry about this slide. You can also have a look at it on your own. And then you will see the next few slides deal with the Consumer Protection Act. So where I would like to finish off your presentation is to have a look at some of the elements of the Code of Conduct that deal with your obligations in terms of advertising. And what's most important here is Clause 5 or Regulation 5 of the EAAB Professional Code of Conduct, and that is the duty not to make misrepresentation or harmful statements or to use harmful marketing techniques. And I think the major purpose of this particular clause is in order to ensure that as estate agents you operate in an ethical and honest manner. You can see Clause 5.1 prohibits you from publishing or causing to be published an advertisement which could create the impression that it was published by the owner of a particular property. The purpose of this clause is to ensure that as an estate agent you always advertise in such a manner that people are aware that they're dealing with an estate agent. And 5.2, you may not willfully or negligently assist anybody to prepare, make or assist that person to make a false statement, whether orally or in writing, or to keep any false books of account. The purpose of this particular clause is also to ensure that you behave in an honest and ethical manner. For example, you may not assist a buyer to falsify an agreement of sale in order to increase the selling price in such a way as to try and obtain a bigger loan from the bank than the agreement of sale that was signed with the seller. By the same token, you also would not be able to assist the buyer to reduce the purchase price, to have a second agreement of sale to reduce the purchase price, because you're trying to help the buyer to pay a lower rate of transfer duty. Both of those examples I've given you are completely unacceptable. They would be in contravention of Clause 5.2 of the Code of Conduct, and certainly you would be guilty of conduct deserving of sanction. What I haven't indicated on this particular slide, but also to make you aware of, is that you may not use harmful or misleading marketing technique in order to obtain a mandate or in order to get an agreement of sale or lease signed. So I think that's also something that's important to be aware of, and it goes back to what we started talking about at the beginning of this presentation, which is that you always need to act in an ethical, honest and fair manner. That brings us to the end of this presentation, dealing with various topics. You can see that there are many topics that we have tried to cover during the short period of time that we have had. I hope that you have found this presentation useful and interesting. I would encourage you to go and do some more research on your own. You may also, should you wish to, contact me. You'll see my contact details are at the end of this particular presentation. Our website address, www.cpmd.co.za. Our telephone number, 011-728-7225. And my email address is graham@cpmd.co.za. Finally, I wish to remind you that you must complete the 10 multiple choice questions that on this particular presentation in order to ensure that you get your CPD points. Good luck, and wishing you everything of the best.